Welcome to Patchwerk for the People, a dynamic podcast series by Patchwerk Recording Studios and the Democracy Center of Cobb County, Georgia. Join us weekly for essential discussions on pre-primary topics that we believe are crucial for shaping the upcoming elections. Tune in for insights that matter as we journey from May to November. Your voice counts. Let's make a difference together. Hey, how you doing? Good day. My name's Curtis Daniel III, one of the two owners of Patchwerk Recording Studios here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm sitting here with my two co-hosts, is what I'm going to call them, because they're not guests, Mr. Carlos Searcy and Devontae Jennings. Real quick, can you guys kind of introduce yourself and tell them what you do and what your background is?
Devontae Jennings, 27-year-old father, soon-to-be husband. Background is music. Was recently a non-voter, now civically engaged and just ready to spread the message on why it's important.
My name is Carlos Searcy. I am father, husband, brother, son, nephew, uncle, all those things. I served in the U.S. Army Reserves for 8 years, and I worked for the Georgia State Patrol for 26 years. So I am a super voter. I vote in every election, and I think that's it. I am a member of NAACP, member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So I am a community partner. So all things community and getting the message out.
All right, and then too, before we get started, I mean, each one is taking time out of their day to come down here to Midtown, and we all know we have wonderful traffic here in Atlanta. So it must be important for you to be doing these episodes. Can each one of you explain why this is important or why you're taking time out of your day to voluntarily disseminate some of this information and touch up on some of these topics and why you think it's important?
Well, I see it day to day why it's important, and then also too, it's just another avenue. Like you were kind of saying a few weeks back, having like Patchwerk and these group of people putting this together to give, especially people that was like me or that are like me now, like I was, the opportunity to hear this. So I have no problem with it. Signing up for traffic, all that.
Well, traffic wasn't that bad today, I got to say. I was shocked coming down from Cobb County down to Patchwerk. Got here rather quickly. So it had told me it was going to take me like 50 minutes on GPS. I got here in probably 42 minutes. So saved a little time. So it wasn't bad. But I don't mind doing this. I am retired. I'm a retired state trooper. Let me say that. I did work for the State Patrol for 26 years, but I've been retired since May of 2021. So I have the time. And I like to engage and educate people that look like me, again, in their late 40s, because a lot of them don't want to engage, or they feel that, from what I understand and from people that I've talked to, a lot of people don't talk to them or engage with them. So, and a lot of them don't understand a lot that goes on. So I feel like education is important, and there's more than just education in the classrooms. There's a lot of other ways to educate people. So I like to do that. Even when I worked as a trooper, I felt like I was educating people.
Talking to the people.
Exactly. When I would pull them over and they're like, well, what did I do? Okay, let me educate you. Because a lot of people don't know the law, and they may not know something was against the law. But, I will have a moment to kind of educate them and tell them. So I love that in doing that. So.
And the thing I like about, all of us talking together is three different perspectives, in my opinion. Like I said, I'm coming in, like I tell Monica, hey, I'm the regular person. I don't know all the terms and the terminology and the language, but I do have questions. So today's topic, is going to be about criminal justice and how people voting or not voting impacts our criminal justice system. For me, since we talked about teaching and educating and learning, I wrote down some terms that I think are going to come up today. And I wanted to talk to you two about, defining these terms and translating them into common knowledge so that as we have the conversation, people would understand them. So I got a list of, I think, 9 or 10 terms, and I'm going to read them off, and then I want you guys to kind of comment on them or say what you think about them or what they mean to you, or explain them to people how you think they're going to come up. So the first term that it's a block of 3 that I wrote down together. I wrote down incarceration, arrest, and conviction. So when you, like, to me, I always tell people, just imagine when we're on our phone and your best friend sends you a message, or if you're doing a talk to text, right? And if one word is wrong in that message, it makes it hard to understand it, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're reading paperwork, or if we're hearing commercials or ads, and we see these terms, incarceration, arrest, record, and conviction, and we really don't have an understanding of it, some people just tune out when they see big words and they don't know. So when they say incarceration, Carlos, what are they meaning by that? And can you be arrested without being incarcerated and convicted? And can you break those 3 terms down for me?
Yeah. So,
and if you can, put them in order that they would happen.
Okay.
All right.
So the first one would be arrest. That's the order. So arrest, and then what was it?
Incarceration and conviction.
Arrest, conviction, then incarceration. Mm-hmm. So arrest is, I was a state trooper, so I would arrest you, take you to jail. Once you get a conviction, you go before a judge, and depending on what that, what the crime is, what you've done or allegedly have done, you get a conviction, then you're incarcerated. So they're going to put you in. So when I take you to jail for whatever I arrested you for, you're pretty much just being detained because you haven't been convicted yet by a judge. You haven't went to see the judge yet. You're being detained, held until you go to court to see the judge.
So on there, you can, so then I wrote down another term in here that seems to be affecting people, and I wrote down cash money bail system.
Yeah, that affects everybody.
So okay, how does that play in? So in my mind, from what you said, I can be arrested.
Right.
If I have some money, my next step would be I would get bailed out.
Yes.
If I don't have any money, am I stuck there until I get convicted?
Not necessarily, because if you don't have the money, you're arrested. You don't have the money, but you may know somebody.
I'm just saying access to the money,
okay,
whether I have it or not. So if I'm a like, you know, when we get into the numbers, they talking about how this criminal system is affecting lower economic and minority people.
Right.
So if I'm a lower economic person and I don't have the money and I don't have access to it, does it affect me differently? I get it. We both get arrested. Well, I got a whole bunch of money and a lot of money.
Right.
But it seems like there's 2 different patterns that if I got money or access to somebody that can bail me out, one thing happened, and then if I don't, it goes another way. Would that be an accurate statement?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely accurate when you talk about the economic impact and lower income versus your middle class, your elite people. It definitely affects that, because if you don't have access to money, or people that have money, you will be stuck until you go to court. Once you go to court, you don't have money for an attorney. One has to be appointed to you, because that's your right to have representation. So you may not be able to afford your own lawyer, but one will be appointed to you. So, and then, they can say, well, you still, and what I'm trying to get to is you still may not be incarcerated. So, because what we said was that you're arrested, you're convicted, then you're incarcerated. But when it comes to the bail, the bondsman, the money, you still may not be incarcerated, because whatever, it depends on the crime. You may get probation and they say, okay, we find you guilty. You did this, but the crime is not so severe that we're going to incarcerate you.
Hold on, I'm regular man. you twisting me up now. I got arrested.
Okay, all right, arrested. We there. All right.
Nothing happens to me. Either one or 2 things. I mean, maybe I'm looking at this. I got arrested, so I'm in this jail.
Right.
I gotta wait until I get convicted, right? So I'm staying in that jail. The only way I can get out of that jail while I got arrested is if I bail out, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I'm stuck in this jail, locked up, if I don't have any money. But if the guy next to me in the same car got arrested and he got access to bail, he gets out. So I get arrested. I stay in there because I don't have bail, and then I lose my job. Mm-hmm. And then I lose my job, so I can't pay my rent.
Lose your house.
Lose your house. Can't pay the child support. So I'm just trying to see, like you saying I hadn't been incarcerated, but it looks like I got arrested and I got incarcerated and I'm waiting on my conviction. Mm-hmm. Am I off or am I tripping? Or because I'm the regular person and I'm looking at it, and when you started talking, I was like, man, he kind of twisted me up.
Well, see, but you got to look at incarceration and being detained. Convicted, when they call a convict, when you hear people say a convict, that's a person that's in prison, right?
Well, that's why I wanted to start off with definitions. So there's a difference between you saying you can be arrested and put in jail, but you're not incarcerated?
Depends on how you look at the definition. I understand that's why you want to say that. But what are you being detained?
I'm asking you.
Or are you being incarcerated?
I think it's like following your arrest, like you said, you are technically still being detained. Now, when it comes to the access to money and bail, if me and you were to get arrested,
but where are you being detained at?
Well, you're in jail.
Okay.
So you're locked up. You're like.
So you locked up. You in jail. Are you incarcerated?
Like Gen Pop arrested.
Are you incarcerated?
I think the word incarcerated is more so used when you're talking about people who are like sent up the road. Like
that's why I wanted to do the definition. Mm-hmm. So clarify it. Yeah.
I feel like incarceration is more when you're talking about you have been convicted and now you are incarcerated to serve out your sentence. If you're still under arrest, you haven't been convicted. So really, I mean, this burden falls on the state. So you're still innocent until proven guilty. So you're not incarcerated.
But
yet.
You're in jail.
But you can bail out.
But if you don't have access to capital, you can't bail out.
But then you in jail.
and you're in jail, but you saying I'm not incarcerated.
But you're still being detained. And we got to have somewhere to hold you. It's like a holding pattern. Mm-hmm. It's a holding pattern. We're going to hold you here because you may move on from this. Just like if you're in an airplane, you're flying, they tell that plane or that pilot he can't land yet. He's in a holding pattern. He's up in the air, but he knows eventually he's going to land. So it's the same. We have to have somewhere to hold you until you go before the judge. And then when you go before the judge, you may be going out. So you're not completely incarcerated. I define incarceration. My definition of incarceration is when you've been convicted and now they say you've been sentenced to prison. Now you're incarcerated because you can't go. You can't get out. Then
you belong to the state.
You're incarcerated.
Sound like game.
Big game.
Okay, so then I have a couple more definitions or terms when they're used. So when you guys use the term social justice, what do you mean by that?
When I say social justice, I mean equality amongst any crime is kind of what I think of social justice. Just equalizing the punishment across the board. So when you think about people of color's arrest rates for marijuana compared to their counterparts, the sentences are a lot harsher on people of color than they are on their counterparts. So when I think of social justice, I'm like, no, if we're sending this person up the road for 2-3 year sentence for 2 ounces of weed, I believe their counterpart should also be on the chopping board to getting 2 to 3 years instead of just slap on the wrist or probation. That's exactly what I think of when I say social justice. It's justice socially, equally amongst everybody.
So then it makes me go back to the previous thing to ask, is it socially justice that just because if I have money, I get to go home and wait for my process to go to get convicted, incarcerated. Mm-hmm. But if I don't have money, we created the same crime. Mm-hmm. So is that socially justice?
Not in my opinion.
Not in your opinion?
Because, I mean, and let's keep it like this. Like, you owner of a nice studio, one of the premier studios in Atlanta. If we get hit on the same charge and they say $100,000 bond, we both get a $100,000 bond.
Right.
I mean, we got to only come up with 10% of that, But I mean, I'm not hitting your pockets or nothing. I'm pretty sure you have more access to get that 10% compared to where, I mean, I got to probably pull some strings, maybe get people to take some loans out to post that 10%. So no, it's not justice.
So look, Carter. So is there anything else besides cash bail? Is that when the house comes up? Like, if they saying like, we want to take this money to make sure that you show up to court, are there any other remedies to be like, give me this collateral, or you can put something else up, or you can do something else to make sure that you're going to go? Do they have any other solutions besides money? Any other options to get out on bail? Is there any other way to get out on bail?
Now, I'm not too well versed on that topic, so
Signature bonds. You could be offered a signature bond.
So what does that mean?
You just sign your name out. I mean, if you get charged with arrested for murder, you're probably not going to get a bond or a signature bond. But there's a lot of people who just get out on a signature bond. Basically,
which I guess too is when they say, and people probably have heard this term, people that have been in court, we're going to release you on your own recognizance. Yeah. We expect you to come back to court when it's time, but we're letting you go.
So is that based on the charge, or is it based on, I guess, the person? So if like I've never done anything before, should I be able to, based on my status and who I am or whatever, does that affect whether you can do a signature bond or your own recognizance? Or do y'all know that? I'm just asking.
No, I think the charge definitely plays a role.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, like Devontae said, if you've been charged with murder, you're not going anywhere. And there are some charges that when you're charged, arrested, you go before the judge. Depending on what the charge is, the judge may say, I don't have the wherewithal, I don't have the means to give you a bond. This has to be bound over to Superior Court. So you may go before the judge, like a magistrate judge, state court judge, then they're going to say, well, your case is being bound over to Superior Court. Superior Court judge has to be the one to set a bond if you're going to get out. So again, it depends on what the charge is. It depends on whether you get that bond or not.
And how good your lawyer is, and if your community elected a judge that's going to be fair. So I think that's this part people skip. They always blame the judge, but these Superior Court judges, these magistrate court judges, a lot of these judges, the DA, that's an elected position. That is something that we have control of to now when we go into court. One, how good is your lawyer? Two, I respect all public defenders because that is one of the hardest jobs in the world. And then three, did we elect a judge that's going to be actually fair, or, we're going to be harsh on crime?
So this is an example of how voting impacts the criminal justice system.
24/7, all day.
So you could literally you could have donated to his campaign. And now you go in front of him. And
just saying.
So that's how it's working.
But and with that too, you need to have a good lawyer. Again, it starts with that. If you're a defendant, you've been arrested. So now you're going before a judge that, like you said, you probably could have, donated to his campaign. But somebody needed to do their due diligence to find that out, though, before you go. Because I don't want you, if I'm the prosecutor, I don't want you in front of a judge that you have given money to. And then that judge probably, is he going to be lenient? Is he not? Does the judge know? Because sometimes they don't know that. You could have given money, they won't know because somebody else handles all that when they're, trying to get elected or running a re-election or campaign. So.
All right, so now I got a question for both of you guys. Would you rather be rich and guilty or poor and not guilty if you got arrested?
Rich and guilty.
I'd rather be poor and not guilty.
Speak on it.
Because I don't want to be guilty of anything, first of all. I mean, and that's me. But I want to be able to fight.
I'm just saying, if you had to go to a court system and you had to be either guilty but rich or poor and not guilty? You saying you would rather be, if you was in court, you'd rather be poor and not guilty?
Because even if you're rich and guilty, you got money, but you still, all they're going to do is give you a plea deal. They go get you to plea, you pay a fine because you're rich, and then you move on, but you still are going to have something on your record.
So you think you're going to get off if you poor and no money?
And if I didn't do it, I do.
It's a whole bunch of people that said they didn't do stuff, but because they didn't have, your first statement was you got to have a good attorney.
Right. So, and I think people that don't have the money, they may not have it, but they can, if you're
I'm talking about access to it.
Okay.
They just can't get it.
But if you are not guilty, I would never tell anybody that's not guilty to go in and say that you are. I would never do that.
So why you give your answer?
Without going too specifically, I know the connection between the ability to afford a high-ranking attorney who has been in this for a minute, that is know the judges, that they are donating $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. If somebody's giving $20,000 to you, you know who that is. And then also too, your ability to just, fight the case. So some examples we see right now in some big RICO cases, who did they go get? We probably can't say the names, but like these are attorneys who, they got a track record, and there's a lot of schmoozing behind the scenes. There's so much schmoozing that people don't realize. Like, I done seen and witnessed attorneys having, conversations and dinners with judges and all type of stuff, and they'll be talking about cases. And because of that relationship, we might go a little lenient on you right now, or your attorney is just putting up a bomb fight. I done seen attorneys put up bomb fights on somebody that was so guilty. I walked out being like, well, maybe he didn't do it. So I think I would just in that scenario, if we just had to pick a choice, I would rather be rich and guilty, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, we know how money operates.
Yeah, and I wasn't mean like found guilty by the people that there, but I would rather have some money and be guilty because I feel like I'm going to get off.
I just think if you got money too and you can afford a good attorney, that attorney really ain't going to fight for you. He just wants your money. He's just getting the money, and he don't care whether you're guilty or not. He is going in and just like, hey, I'm getting paid regardless. But somebody that is not guilty, don't have a lot of money, can find an attorney that believes in them, hears their heart, knows them, and go in and fight for them and still can win.
So all these instances where you see somebody that you kind of, in your opinion, you formed an opinion, you think they did something, and then they going against somebody that might not have did something, and they got all these high-powered attorneys, and they always seem to get off. That doesn't sway anything? That doesn't, like, or do you think having money affects the justice system, like the social justice system? Does it affect it one way or the other? So we looking at a guy now that there's always people that you would be like, man, if I did that, I'd have been in jail 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I still say that.
But the reason that he's off is because he got he's guilty, probably, but he got all these attorneys that appeal and all this stuff. So I've always be like, man, if something happened to me, I'd rather be done kind of committed the crime and have a whole bunch of money as opposed to be the person on the other end that didn't do nothing but don't have that type of representation or that opportunity, because this system is it ain't seem socially justice to me.
And it's funny we're talking about this on the day after OJ passed, right? And talking about the dream team lawyers and that he had money, he had access to he had a whole dream. They called him the dream team. So, and we ain't gonna get into whether he did it or not, but he did get off. So,
So all right. So then we define social justice, but we flip between when people talk about the criminal justice system, what is meant by that?
The criminal justice system is when it talks about law enforcement, the law itself, being arrested, going to jail. So you have the criminal justice system, then you have the judicial. So the judicial is when you get to court, with your judges and the lawyers. But criminal justice is, you know, when you're arrested, locked up in the jail. So that's what we're talking about.
So I saw a term mentioned, criminal justice principles. Does that mean anything to you?
Words.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because then it listed like 13 principles, I guess, of the criminal justice principles that the person is presumed innocent
until proven
and then,
guilty.
so they have these different principles that fell up underneath that. But when I was looking at it, it made me be like, okay, there are. I was wondering if they were Georgia or national or federal. I didn't know that we had criminal justice principles. So I wrote it down and I was like, I'm gonna ask you guys about it.
So when you're supposed to have those principles, right? But like proven you're innocent until proven guilty. How many times does that happen? Most times it seems like you're innocent. I mean, you're guilty. Now you got to prove your innocence. So you're supposed to have those principles, but we know it doesn't always, go that way. Mm-hmm. And again, if you're arrested, you're supposed to, you go to jail. If you're detained, you're supposed to have access to representation, to a lawyer. Like I said, there are some people that don't, have it. Some people they don't want a lawyer. They want to be what's called pro se. They want to represent themselves when they go to court because they feel like it's not a big deal.
Don't do that.
And they feel they know themselves better than lawyers. So some people want to do that too. So,
yes.
But you're supposed to have those principles in place, but I don't think they always work.
Yeah, because like the right to a speedy trial, there's a certain time limit that you have to be in front of a judge, like after being arrested. These are all principles that are set into place to help protect people who are quote unquote criminals, maybe made bad decisions. But like Carlos said, to me, the reason why I said words is because, like he said, innocent until proven guilty. But we just talked about OJ. I mean, he was proven innocent. How many people still be like, he did it? So in that point, it's kind of like, like, is it really? But then most of those principles are set in place really to protect one before they go into the courtroom. And I say don't represent yourself because these attorneys are like magicians or what with the words and the statutes and all this stuff. Like they will go there and wrap you around their finger.
Well, yeah, and too with that, if you are going into a case and you say, I want to be pro se, I want to represent myself, if you're not an attorney, you don't know the law, you don't know what you can object to, mm-hmm. You don't know if you can file for discovery, which means you can ask the other side for information that may help you with your case. You don't know that. You don't know how to pick a jury. You don't know who you want on the jury and who you don't want on the jury. Mm-hmm. If somebody gets up on the jury stand and they say, I don't like law enforcement, and you're like, oh, I want that person, but you don't know if they're going to be on your side or not. So you need an attorney that knows how to pick a jury. You need an attorney that knows the law. So if you're up on the stand and you need to object to you need them to know that, hey, that's not admissible in court. So it's not good to represent yourself. You need somebody that knows that. And this is what they do every day. So, but again, those are principles that you're supposed to be afforded. But a lot of times we know that they don't work and they're not.
All right. So now I got one more term and then I'm going to roll into, my question and go into some of this data. So legislative session, what does that mean? What are they doing?
So in Georgia, the legislative session starts the second Monday in January of every year. It's 40 days, and they go in. The legislative session is your state representatives and state senators, so two bodies. And they go in and they determine what laws need to be changed, or they put in new laws. They determine the state's budget, mm-hmm. For the year. So that's what legislative session is when your state senators, state representatives come to the state capitol second Monday of January every year, and they go for 40 days. And it's not 40 straight days because they may take some time off, just like this one just ended in end of March. So they started, second Monday in January, but it just ended the end of March. So, but it's 40 days. And there also may be a special call session. The governor can call a special session, which means once they have left after those 40 days, if something didn't get handled or they need to do some more business, the governor can call a special session for them to come back in, which just happened last year for the maps. Mm-hmm. We talked about the legislative maps. Federal judge said, hey, the maps in Georgia are not representative of the people in Georgia, so you all need to go back and enact some new maps. So they had to have a special session for that.
So when they come in, are they just making laws, or they making laws that got to be presented to the people that have to be voted on, or how does that work?
They vote on them. Some of them, they may say, just like creating a new city, right? So they'll say in the legislative session, like, okay, we want this to happen, and they have to vote on it. So the way it works is you have a bill, which is a bill. It's not a law yet. It's a bill. A particular senator or representative introduces it to his body, to his coworkers, his fellow senators or fellow representatives, he or she. They introduce it, they debate on it, they talk about, then they vote on it. Okay. So if it's just like creating a new city, they say, yeah, we want this to happen. But then that goes back out to whatever area that is, and then the people will vote on it. But if it's a law, then they vote on it, and July, whenever they decide.
So
July 1st,
they come up with what they want to vote on, and then the legislative session is the one that approves it, or?
It's like, if we're all representatives, I can come with the bill. Once I introduce that bill, you're going to have debates on it or whatever. They're going to send it to a committee. Once they send it to that committee that it belongs in, and sometimes bills don't get sent to the right committee, in my opinion, they do what they need to do there, amendments, whatever, back and forth. Then it's going to be put back where it originated. So if it came from the Senate side, it's going to go back to the Senate, back to the House. They're all going to vote on that. Once they vote on that, that's where you have crossover day come into play. So if your bill doesn't cross over, so if you're a representative and your bill doesn't get out of the House and make it to the Senate on crossover day, that bill's going to die until the next session. If it crosses over into the Senate by crossover day, now the rest of the session is spent with the bills basically going back and forth. The Senate may want to amend something. The House may want to amend something. That's where the battle comes into play. And then sine die is the day everything must be signed. So if your bill doesn't make it past sine die, it's definitely just get signed or die. So once it makes it out of sine die, then the governor, like you said, has until July to either sign it, veto it, or if he makes no move on it at all, it automatically becomes law.
I'm lost. So all of that is happening during the legislative session.
Oh yes. Yeah, along with lobbying.
So when we see stuff on ballots, mm-hmm. and they be like, we want to vote on something, when does that get to the people? Do we do that and then it goes to the session, or has they already done something? I mean, I'm the regular person, man, so you got to explain it.
They've already done it. If you see it on the ballot, it's already been done. And just like I said, we're creating a city. So now it's coming to you for you to vote on, but it's already been to the legislative session.
Okay.
Yeah. So, with the ballot, though, you have to understand and know, because sometimes when you talk about the legislative session, if it's the local, like a county or city ordinance, that didn't go to the legislative session, but that may be on your ballot. So that is the city that you live in or the county that you live in. They are asking you about something just in your city or your county.
If you want to increase the tax rate for the
exactly.
So it's different in each different place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you talk about the legislative session, that is for the entire state. Okay. But there are things you will see on your ballot that you may have to vote on. It's just local for the city or county.
All right. So I got a question that was submitted. It says, when I start, ask Devontae in particular about the current state of social justice in the state. Did this legislative session help or hinder it? And what should we be paying attention to right now before the governor signs or not signs something into law?
This legislative session did not benefit it. I think there's a lot more work that could be done. I don't think this legislative session benefited at all. I think it was probably some of the worst attacks we've seen when it comes to criminal justice. Harsher on crime, certain bills being pushed out that are, like, putting certain minimums on cash bonds, so you have to come up with at least this much before you can go on. Starting to criminalize organizations that raise money to bail somebody out. So I think we touched on it last time, back in the civil rights era, when Martin Luther King and your Malcolm X's would get arrested. Usually churches and their congregation would fish fry, fundraise up, bail them out. That's about to be non-existent. They're now could possibly be facing felonies for doing stuff like that. And then there's just, there's a lot. There's a lot. And a lot of it gets scraped under the rug because it's so much happening. So you have one side that's on the defensive side, one side that's on the offensive side. The offensive side is pushing out so much legislation that the defensive side maybe have 20 bills to read before they go vote on the next go around, and they don't even know what's hitting. So this legislative session, in my opinion, did not help it, and it made it worse.
And you saying it did not help the criminal justice system?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not criminal justice.
Okay.
It helped people who think we should be harsher on crime,
right,
but it didn't help the criminal justice system.
Okay. You got any comment on that?
He did a good job on that. So
all right. So now I'm reading from this report where there's some things that I highlighted, and I just want to. I'm not even offering my personal opinion, but I'm reading some of this stuff, and it made me curse next to it. And so I got a question that says, what is or how would you describe America's approach to citizens who are accused and convicted of crime?
Say that one more time.
What is or how would you describe America's approach to citizens who are accused and convicted of crime? And so reading down later on, it seems like America's approach is to put people in jail. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem like there are a whole bunch of alternative solutions. So I just wanted to know, I mean, that's what I read, but I'm saying, how would you describe America's approach? And what is it? What is it? And how would you describe it?
I think we got to keep it real. Criminal justice system, well, and it's crazy, and most people probably think it will, that I was a law enforcement officer, but I think the criminal justice system is big money. It's big money.
Oh, yeah.
They start building prisons based upon third grade reading scores. If you can't read in third grade, it's already said that you're probably going to end up in prison. So what is America's approach? Is to build prisons and to criminalize people. And you're right, some people commit crimes. Only, I heard a story about a guy that was homeless. So when it gets cold, he would go into regular convenience store and just steal something, right? Because he knew that he would get locked up and go to jail. He needed somewhere to stay. He was just going to steal something. So the remedy for that is to put him in jail. So that is America's approach, is that if you commit a crime, no matter how small, you can be arrested for it. As a state trooper, if you were speeding 30 miles over the speed limit in Georgia, that was an arrestable offense. I could take you to jail for that. If you're driving your car and you don't have insurance on it, I could take you to jail. If you're driving on a suspended license, you can go to jail for that. So it seems and appears that America's approach to all of this is put them in prison, put them in jail, lock them up. And now some people need to be locked up. Right. Mm-hmm. They do, don't get me wrong, but not for every single thing.
Mm-hmm. So on here it says 1.4 million people are behind bars nationally. And the study found that 39% or 576,000 were in prison without any public safety reason and could have been punished in a less costly and damaging way, such as community service.
I would agree. I mean, but it's a school to prison pipeline. Like I said, they start looking at you in third grade. Mm-hmm. He can't read. He didn't pass those national tests. He didn't do this. He's going to end up in jail.
I guess I'm ignorant to it, but I guess there's different jails or just there's a catch-all. So if like you said, if I'm speeding over for 30, I'm going to go to jail with the dude that shot somebody? I mean, jail is jail or prison, you know what I mean? Like it seems like you saying jail is a catch-all. Like there should be, if we going from 1 to 25, if you do anything, they jump into 25. And it seems like there should be some other steps in between going to jail.
Well, there's levels too. So like just because you get sent to Rice Street, like there's literally levels to it. So they may not put you on the 6th floor with, those guys, but you may be like, level 1 or 2. So you probably won't be mixing and mingling with them, but you're in the same building as them.
Okay. So you go to jail, you going to jail. But I guess they got different, but if it's so many people in there, that's when they start getting
crowded and
okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
I was using Rice Street more specifically just to kind of like your level 6 people are a little bit more violent, a little bit more serious charges compared to like level 1 and level 2.
But see, and we have issues with that too. It was a guy arrested and sent over to, the Fulton County Jail for traffic violation. Didn't get through the court system like it should have, wind up dying and being killed. Shouldn't have even been in jail. Should have been released. So again, and that's like you just said, it's a catch-all. Just send everybody to jail, send them to jail. But you have overcrowding, you have court calendars that are backed up, and people are not going. Like you said, they have a right to a speedy trial, but they're sitting forever, and they should not even be in there.
All right. So another thing, I put a check new. It said an estimated 70 million to 100 million Americans, roughly 1 in 3 adults, have an incarceration, a conviction, or an arrest record. Is that like a scarlet letter on you? I mean, how does having? I mean, could you too expound or talk about some of the negative impacts of having an incarceration, a conviction, or an arrest record?
I mean, it's alarming, man. Those numbers are alarming to me. But if you have a record, it definitely affects you. You can't get a decent job. You can't work, provide for your family. I mean, and you can, again, having access to money, seems like money runs everything. You can get a good lawyer that can try to go and get your record expunged, which means get it cleared so that when people do a background check or they ask you, for your arrest record, they won't see all of those things. But it definitely affects you. But I mean, and it affects you mentally. We haven't even got into the mental aspect of that. If you've did your time, you've done that, you're trying to move on with your life, you always have that hanging over you. Like, man, I gotta expose this. I gotta tell. I want to go get this job, but I gotta tell them I was arrested. I gotta tell them this. That hurts mentally. Right. And I don't think people even think about that or talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I really and truly feel that some judges, they give people of color harsher sentences. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it. Being in a courtroom, for something else and just seeing like, wow, man, they, it really didn't.
He had to do all that.
Yeah, they didn't have to do all that. But
and you probably seen them been lenient with other people.
And I've seen it. And then, it's like they're trying to make an example. Right. Like, I'm going to make an example out of you. And you talk about being fair. Everybody's not fair. And I still think that judges, lawyers, DAs, I know some. I know them. But I don't think people really take it into consideration until it's them. If it's me and you, I can go in there all day long, cry, plead my heart out, talk all this stuff to them, tell them how I really feel. they don't feel it because it's not them. Right. Until it's them, they're directly connected to it, they don't feel that.
All right, so then here's another line. It says, according to the Prison Policy Initiative, Georgia incarcerates more individuals per capita than any other democracy on the planet. Further, black residents make up a disproportionate percentage of the state's incarceration percentage. And so these are the numbers. So it says here, this is just talking about Georgia. So Georgia makes up black people in Georgia make up 30.4% of the population, but they make up 61% of the prison population. White people make up 50% of Georgia's population, but they only make up 30% of the prison population. So it's then it goes down to Hispanic. They make up 10% in Georgia, but only 6.3. So what is that saying? So it's like those are just numbers that I literally put asterisks next to them. It was like, wow.
And when you talk about the numbers, all right, so you said 30.4% of African Americans make up the population in Georgia.
That's
so 30.4%. So when you talk about elections and electing people statewide in the state of Georgia, only 30.4% are African Americans. Most African Americans identify as Democrats. So, when you talk about that, that pretty much tells you when there's an election, like who's going to win. Right. Unless you have some crossover vote or some other folks voting, it's going to be hard to win an election when we don't even make up that big of the percentage. And then some of us don't even want to participate in the process. Mm-hmm. But we already have that behind us. We're only making up 30.4% of the population in the state. Then we don't want to vote. But then we got to go before some of these people that have been elected and they see us and,
So we ain't even no threat because they like, he ain't threatening my office because he don't vote anyway. And if I put this scarlet letter on him, he definitely ain't going to be able to affect me.
Yeah, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So, that right there tells you a lot. But I really want people to understand, go vote for your sheriff. Please, pay attention. And for those numbers specifically, you need to go vote for your sheriff. You need to pay attention to what your sheriff controls. If you have any, passion towards immigration, you got to understand your sheriff has the responsibility or the option to alert ICE or don't alert ICE, all those numbers. Go vote for your sheriff. Go vote for your sheriff. Go vote for your sheriff, please.
So again, with those numbers that you just talked about, Curtis, and how, again, I said they are building prisons based on numbers. A lot of this voting, it's all science. There's a science to it. So they look at numbers and see, well, only this percentage is reading in third grade. We know, so by the time they reach high school, this percentage is not going to finish high school. So they are building prisons based upon that. So the numbers are really alarming. And I just think we need to do a better job. And that's why what we're doing here is so important, because we want to educate. Again, that's that word, right? We talked about it in the beginning. We want to educate our people and let them know, because a lot of them don't really understand it and don't know it.
And here it has a stat to line you up. It says high school dropouts are 3.5 times more likely than high school graduates to be arrested in their lifetime. High school dropouts are 63% more likely to be incarcerated than their peers with a 4-year college degree.
The numbers don't lie.
The numbers make you sad. They make you want to cuss. But I guess cussing doesn't do anything about it. The purpose of this show is to kind of educate and encourage people to plug into the system and affect, I guess, the political stuff in their local place first, right? That big stuff looks overwhelming, but you can have an impact. Like, okay, we only make up 30% of the whole state, but in Fulton County, black people may make up 60%. So you can kind of have an effect there, right?
And I think too, when we talk about voting and people say it doesn't affect me and the system doesn't work for me, it won't work for you if you don't get involved and you got to work it. You got to get involved in order to make it work.
Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't matter, why do you think they make it so hard for you not to vote? I think that's the biggest thing that woke me up. Somebody kind of had to tell me, like, you know, I was spitting the whole rhetoric. It don't matter. Everything's already set in stone. And they're like, you know, if it don't matter, why are they trying so hard for you not to?
All right. So today's conversation was brought to you by the Cobb County Democracy Center. The name of our show is Patchwerk for the People. And you guys have anything to say in closing, or any encouragement or any advice, or if there were one or two things, what are like if you would just break them down, like 2, 3, 4 steps that people need to do if they don't even know if they registered to vote? What are the first couple things people need to do?
Go to the Secretary of State website. Go to the My Voter page, My Voter MVP or something like that. See if you're registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote, if you are, go to the tab that says My Sample Ballot. Print your sample ballot out, and then right there will give you all the information of what commission district you fall in, what House district you fall in, and then literally simple Google search at that point. And then just go find out like who is representing you, who is your voice, what do they stand behind. But that's just the easiest place to start, and where I suggest everybody start. And then send them some emails, pull up to their office, call them. I mean, electeds listen to people who vote. I definitely say that.
And then, Carlos, for you, I would want you to kind of dispel like just what you're hearing in general, that when you hear people saying something, you be like, man, that ain't true. Like, what messages are they putting out there to minority voters that you would just speak on? Maybe 2 or 3 of them that people are scared of, or scared tactics, and you just be like, man, that ain't true. What are you hearing that you know that they pushing that ain't true?
So the craziest thing that I've heard is that if you go vote and you have warrants or whatever the case is, you're going to get arrested. Not true. There's nobody sitting there with a computer locking you up if you come in to vote. Check your status, as Devontae said. Check to see if you're registered to vote. We all have phones now. We have computers, laptops, iPads, whatever the case may be. Check to see if you are registered to vote. Get involved in the process. You'll be amazed at what you can do and what changes can be made. There are so many people that are now in office because they had the passion, the drive. Something happened to them that did not work. Now they are in office. So get involved in the process, because you can make a difference. Your vote does count. People want to hear what you have to offer. So that would be my thing. But yeah, the biggest myth is you're not going to get arrested if you go vote. Go make your voice heard and make it count.
All right, cool, man. We appreciate you guys paying attention, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.